Om Sarvadharmastapakastvam Sarvadharmaswarupakah Acharyanam Mahacharyo Ramakrishna Ayate Namaha. We have been studying here Sri Ramakrishna the Great Master, fifth part, the Master in Divine Mood and Narendranath, and we are reading the second section of the 12th chapter. Name is Thakur Stay in Shambhukur. And in the second chapter, we are specially reading about the household devotees, how they bore the financial expenses, though nobody of them was rich. But they had the nishtha, steadfast faith in Sri Ramakrishna's divinity, and even if it could reduce to some extent at some days, Sri Ramakrishna's, they used to see special spiritual manifestation, and that restored their faith to original or made it more, and they went on serving. And in that connection, we saw Dr. Sarkar's changes, we saw on the Sandhi Puja of Durga Puja, and we saw on the Kali Puja. Now, we read the para 27. The devotee's direct experience of a special spiritual manifestation of the Master at times other than those religious festivals. So because it was in front of all in a group and very special manifestation, so Durga Puja and Kali Puja is mentioned. It does not mean that on other days it would not be there. So it was not only on a special days of religious ceremonies that the devotees experience the divine power and the divine nature of the Master during his stay in Shambhukur. Divine nature, divine power. They had the opportunity of seeing the manifestation of that nature burst forth at any time on any day. Any time on any day, which strengthened their faith in him as a God-man. Devamana. God-man, please do not misunderstand me, the modern God-man. God-man in the modern time, this will have to be taken care of. Because in these days, God-man is taken as one who has some miraculous powers, nothing more than that. And some of the characters have been very bad. So, the original term is Devamana. Devamana means he is God inside, not 50-50. He is fully God in his consciousness and powers also. But through a human body and human mind, it is being expressed. That is the wonder of avatars. Devamano is the name given only to avatars. that though they assume a human body and a human mind, but the consciousness within and resultant power within, not only power, but the consciousness and power is that of God Himself. So, that is the meaning of God-man here. In these modern days, we could find some other word for that. However, events similar to those mentioned above did not take place again before all and sundry. That was the main point. On Vijayadashmi, that Sandhi Puja and Kali Puja, 30 people were assembled in Kali Puja day. And similarly, on that Sandhi Puja, many devotees were there. So, like that, it did not happen in front of a big group. All and sundry, he says. Secular Samakshi. I think this sundry makes it too light. Please, again before all. All and sundry brings the non-devotees also. It was given to only a few devotees to witness them. They in their turn communicated them to other devotees with similar result. The result is that all of them are getting their faith increased. This will be clear to the reader when we mention here a few events as examples. So now we are dealing with Balaram Basu. How Sri Ramakrishna exerted his power to remove the possible obstacles from Balaram's path. That is the main thing. Once Sri Ramakrishna has called somebody his own, it is his responsibility to remove the obstructions also. That is the special power we shall see here. Balaram's love and reverence for the master resented by his relatives. They were Vaishnavas. We mentioned elsewhere certain things about Balaram, that is that mosquito killing and all that has been mentioned. Some of his relatives became ill-disposed towards him because he and his family had contracted love and reverence for the master. They would believe in their Vaishnava teachers only. They had sufficient reason to become so. Firstly, that means it is rational on one side. Firstly, they held religious doctrines that were too narrow, Vaishnava doctrines. And they were too much given to the observance of external rites and ceremonies. According to the training and education prevalent in Vaishnava families in which they were born. So, Swami Saradananda is in a way telling the drawbacks of the Vaishnavas. Firstly, they are narrow-minded. And secondly, too much given to external observances. They could not therefore comprehend the liberal doctrine of the master. And Thakur is mixing with Shaktas, Shaivas, Vedantis and everybody and saying Jato Mattato path, as many paths, so many paths. This the Vaishnavas could not digest, comprehend. For he had the firm conviction that all churches and denominations as means for realizing God are true. True means helpful to realize God. And he was not putting on any kind of external emblem of religion because he was Paramahansa. So not even Gerva, no Vaishnava marks, not Shaiva mark, nothing. Nor did they feel the need for any exertion towards comprehension. So why we want to exert and to understand that in spite of this he can be a great man. They therefore regarded Balaram's liberal tendencies acquired through the Master's grace and company as lack of and deviation from religiousness. So Balaram was becoming more and more liberal. So they thought that he is becoming more and more irreligious. Secondly, this is the first point. Secondly, wealth, respect, noble birth, and other kinds of worldly superiority very often develop in man a peculiar kind of pride and egoism. It was a matter of pride and glory to them to have been born in the family of the late Krishnaram Basu of holy memory. So one of their ancestors was a great devotee and they are born in that family. It is superfluous to say that they felt wounded at heart when they heard that Balram forgot that great reputation of the family and went at any time, like an ordinary man, to the master at Dakshineshwar. Went at any time on special occasions, invited, that is their tradition. To the master at Dakshineshwar to learn religion, and that worst of all, he did not hesitate to take his wife, daughters, and other ladies there. And that was Balaram's habit. Not only wife and daughters, other ladies of relations, neighbors, everybody. They were therefore determined to dissuade him now from it. They tried to prevent Balaram from coming to the master. Pride is generally seen to have recourse to dishonest means. Because of ahankar, we take recourse to dishonest means to serve our ends. When honesty proves unavailing, they will first try by persuading Balaram. He is not accepting, then some dishonest means. Some of the relatives of Balaram were in that state of mind. When they found that neither the high praise of the single-minded devotion and great love for the chosen ideal of Bhagwan Das of Kalna, so Vaishnava Gurus they will point out, and other Vaishnava fathers, nor the repeated reminders of the greatness of the family could dissuade him from going to the master. They assumed an attitude of hatred toward the master and did not even hesitate to calumniate him sometimes. Ninda they will do. False ninda. It must of course be said that they received their reports about the master at second hand. They had not seen him. Those who see him immediately understand so many things, not those who see him superficially, and regarded him as devoid of single-minded devotion to his chosen ideal. Heterodox in matters of food and drink, and customs and usages, and antagonistic to the use of marks on the forehead and other emblems of the Vaishnava religion. Seeing that this did not produce any effect, so even this Ninda did not produce any effect in Balaram. They at last brought serious, distorted accounts of the master and Balaram to the ears of his cousins Nimai Charan Basu and Harivallabh Basu. That means all the Vaishnavas or all the Basus or all their family. They brought it to the two cousin brothers. Why? The early life of Balaram. Now let us understand Balaram's background. In the Brahma Sutra Bhashya, there is a discussion whether we want to know Brahman or we want to know everything about Brahman. And Shankar says it is directly we want to know Brahman. Whether the about the Brahman will include, no. That general will not include the specific. That means one pointedness in another. Then the question comes that do you not want to know at least something about Brahman? To that the reply is, in order to know Brahman, whatever is required we shall know. That we find here. Saradananda Swami's style is that we want to know Thakur. We want to know Thakur as God through devotees. So Balaram has come. Now when we want to know Thakur through Balaram, now connection with Balaram also we are knowing. The noble quality of kindness and the spirit of renunciation and dispassion which were prevalent in Balaram. So Vaishnavas mostly lack these things. Renunciation, this they lack. But Balaram had it. So maybe Balaram was born in a Vaishnava family, but he has his own personality. Renunciation and dispassion, Tyaga and Vairagya, which were prevalent in, that means actual Tyaga is called renunciation. And that spirit is called dispassion. Which were prevalent in Balaram convinced him that estates, etc., could not be managed properly without occasional recourse to cruel means. They had big estates, and to manage them, sometimes you have to take recourse to cruel means. So he left his estate and other property in charge of Nimai Babu, and from that, some income you give me, you manage. Although what he got from him as the income of his property was not always sufficient. That means though very rich, he lived as a poor person comparatively. He somehow managed his worldly affairs with it. He was also not physically fit to look after those things. Cruelty is one thing, but physical fitness, stamina, strength of the body, this he did not have because he was soft in nature. At one period after reaching youth, he became so ill of dyspepsia, mandagni, that means not feeling hungry enough, that he had to give up taking rice for 12 years at a stretch. In Bengal, rice is the main food, and that he was not taking. And live on barley water and milk. He spent a great part of that period at Puri for regaining his health. Puri, near the seashore, is very healthy spot. He then passed this time in japa, worship, holy company, and paying daily obeisance to the image of the Divine Lord and so on. So completely given to religion. He had thus opportunities for being well acquainted with whatever good or bad there was in the Vaishnava community, because he was always associating with the holy men of Vaishnava community there. So clearly, good and bad, everything he knew. Shortly after, he came to Calcutta on some business and met the master. We have already given an indication how his life changed day by day by virtue of his living in the master's holy company. So I seen more liberality and understanding things and what to concentrate upon, all that was changed. Balaram came to Calcutta and luckily met the master. So it was divine ordinance. Sri Ramakrishna had seen him in Chaitanya's Kirtan. Balaram had to come to Calcutta for a few weeks at the time of the marriage of his eldest daughter. His peace of mind during his Full 11 years of life at Puri was not otherwise disturbed. So, sadhana for 11 years. His cousin, Harivallabh Basu, purchased the house at 57 Ramkanta Basu Street shortly after that event, after the marriage of Balram's elder daughter. For that he had come. But then the cousin brother purchased a house after that. His father and cousins secretly conferred together. Balram's father and his cousins secretly conferred together and asked him to live in that house. For what? So that he should not mix with sadhus at Puri. So everywhere it happens like that. Those who oppose do it a certain purpose and the reverse takes place. Lest he should renounce the world on account of his intimate relation with the holy men at Puri. Deprived of the sacred company of holy men and the daily visits to the temple of Sri Jagannath, he felt dejected and came to live in Calcutta with a heavy heart. He seems to have intended at first to go back to Puri somehow or other after a short stay. But he completely gave up that resolve when he met the master and arranged to live permanently in Calcutta. How he would feel much worried now he would feel much worried from time to time lest Harivallabh Basu should ask him to vacate the house or Nimai Basu should call him to Kothar to look after the estate. Kothar in Odisha. They had the biggest estate. Holy Mother stayed there afterwards. To look after the estate and other property and thus deprive him of the holy company of the master. So the estate management he had given to Nimai and Harivallabh was otherwise senior in the house. Balram's cousin Harivallabh came to Calcutta. That is the point of worry. Anxious thoughts sometimes foretell future events. This held good of Balram now. Here, his apprehension came true. At the secret, why he had come? At the secret instigation of his relatives, both his cousins sent him letters hinting that they were displeased with him. And the news that Harivallabh Basu would soon come to Calcutta and stay with him for a few days with a view to settling some important matters in consultation with him, that is business matters, also reached him duly. Although the soul of Balram was not distressed on that account, since he felt that he had done nothing wrong, he was dejected lest the force of circumstances should take him away from the master. It is becoming dim. After a great deal of anxious thought, he at last came to the conclusion that he would not leave the master behind during the master's illness and go elsewhere, even though his cousins decided against him. So he had come to that resolve, especially because Thakur was ill physically. Harivallabh Basu came to Calcutta in the meantime. Balram made every arrangement to ensure that his cousin had no trouble or inconvenience during his stay with him. That side is fully ready. He then remained firm in his own resolve and without fear or anxiety continued visiting the master openly every day. So, real devotion, real love conquers fear. The master desired to see Harivallabh out of compassion for Balaram. The face is the best mirror of the mind. The master understood that there was a struggle going on in Balaram's mind. As soon as he saw his face, when he came to him on the day Harivallabh Basu came to Calcutta. The master looked upon Balram as very much his own. Sympathizing with him in his trouble, the master called him aside and putting a number of questions to him, came to know everything about the situation, as Sadhana Swamiji described up till now, and said at last, "What sort of man is he? Can you bring him here someday?" That means Thakur would deal him. If he was a good man, religious man, irreligious man, he should know what type he is, and he will deal with him differently. Balaram replied, "As a man, he is very good, sir. Learned, intelligent, magnanimous, and charitable. Udar Hriday, Udar Hasta. He gives away a lot, Dan, and is a devoted soul too, Bhakta. His only defect is the one that the rich generally suffer from, namely, he is a little too credulous. That means people will put things to him and he will believe without analyzing. He has guessed something from others' words in this case. He is displeased with me only because I come here. So I don't know if you would come here at my request." Acha. Thakur said, "What sort of man is he? Can you bring him here someday?" To that Balram's replies that because he is displeased on me because I come to you, so how can I ask him to come with me? The master said, "You need not then ask him. Please call Girish here." So Girish is expert in many matters. Girish came and gladly agreed to bring Harivallabh. He said Harivallabh and I were classmates for some time when we just stepped into our youth. So I usually go to him to see him as soon as I know he has come to Calcutta. Therefore, it is not at all difficult for me to do it. I will go to see him this very day. Girish's promptness. Girish brought Harivallabh to the master. His ideas were changed completely by the master's behavior. That is the main thing. All this background needs to tell about that. How Thakur influenced Balram's cousin brother so that Balram's obstructions should go away. Girish came next day with Harivallabh Basu at about 5 p.m. and introduced him to the master saying, "He is Harivallabh Basu, my boyhood friend." He did not refer to as Balram's cousin. He is the government pleader at Cuttack. He has come to see you. That is what he said. The master welcomed him lovingly, seated him close to him, and said, "I heard of you from many people and had a desire to see you. I had again a fear lest you should have a calculating intellect because he is a rich man, so and narrow-minded, that makes a calculating intellect Patwari Buddhi in Bengali." To Girish. But I now see it is not so. So, praising him to bring him to his side. Thakur's speciality. Pointing at Harivallabh. He has the simplicity of a boy. So by Thakur's telling like that, simplicity will be become more prominent. To Girish. Do you notice his eyes? One can never have such eyes if one's heart is not full of devotion. So whatever signs he could get, he is catching them. Touching Harivallabh suddenly, that is the main point. Suddenly he touched Harivallabh. "Oh yes, you seem to be very much my own. With you I don't feel like keeping my distance." So praising him and then touching him. Harivallabh bowed down to the master, took the dust off his feet and said, "That is your grace." So changed. Girish said it is natural that he should have devotion for the Lord, for he is born in a family of noted devotees. People think so highly of the devotion of the late Krishna Ram Basu. So that pride is on one side, but actual devotion is also transmitted. That he is considered worthy of being remembered every morning. Pratasmaraniya Krishna Rambasu. When they take the name of pious soul. So it is a habit in the morning to take the name not only of God but of pious souls. That is called Pratasmaraniya. The fame of his piety has brought glory to this part of the country. So Girish is praising more. That part of the country, Cuttack and other, itself has become glorious because the Orissa, because of Krishna Rambas. Who would have devotion if not they who are born in this family? There arose thus a discussion on devotion to the divine Lord. So Thakur turned it to that. What is devotion? The master was speaking variously to those present about the fact that the variously in different ways, that the supreme achievement of human life was to have faith in God, devotion to Him, and absolute dependence on Him, and to realize Him finally. That is not adding here, because the Vaishnavas will not understand that. As much as Vaishnavas could assimilate faith in God, devotion to Him, and absolute dependence on Him, they do not go forward to say that we will become identified with Him and all that. That would have put him off immediately. So when Thakur was talking like that, when he entered into Samadhi, that was natural for Thakur. Any day, any time. When a little later he regained partial consciousness, he asked one of us to sing a devotional song and explaining in a low voice its import to Harivallabh. That was Thakur's style. Was in deep ecstasy once more while explaining that song, again deep ecstasy. When the song came to an end, it was seen that 2 or 3 young devotees also were in a trance and completely charmed with the master's words, and that touched everyone's heart. Harivallabh shed tears of love. He took leave of the master on that occasion, sometime after it was thus. So, he will become favorable. Why the master touched persons in the course of conversation? The reason. So he is explaining now this touch. That was spiritually arousing the good things in them, spiritual things in them. While we were at Dakshineshwar, where we very often saw the master cleverly, that means not with show that I am touching you, cleverly touch a newcomer in the course of conversation when the latter began arguing against his doctrine or anyone else who came in a mood of antagonism against him on account of some reason or other. So that obstruction, to remove that, he used to touch. And saw that they accepted his words and forward. Not hypnotism or anything, but some obstruction has come in the mind. By the touch, he removes that. Of course, he behaved that way only with those he felt pleased to see. So, when he saw that there is some substance in them, then only he did this. He did not show his miraculous powers to change everybody into devotees. He was God himself. He knows what is the ordained. One day he told us the reason of it of his own accord. He said, under the influence of egoism and the feeling that they are in no way inferior to anyone, people do not easily like to accept others' words. As soon as they touch the being who resides within this, that tendency loses its force. That egoism cannot raise its head again on account of his divine power. Even as a snake touched with a particular herb at the time of raising its foot, bends its head low. So that snake is like ego. That is why I cleverly touch their persons during talks with them. The above mentioned words of the Master came to our mind on seeing Harivalla Basu take leave of him with reverence in his heart and in an attitude completely contrary to that he had before. The thought, it is needless to say, that Balram was doing something wrong in visiting the Master was never again seen to cross the minds of his cousins through Harivallam Nimancharan also. Now, one show, we may say, of the extraordinary powers has been dealt with, and Saradananda mentioned some examples. Increase in the number of devotees, the Master pointed out to them their paths of sadhana. Sadhanas, their paths, that is speciality of Sri Ramakrishna. The postures fit for the meditation on God with and without forms. He is teaching them now. So the sadhakas who are interested should listen to this more carefully. As the physical condition of the master grew worse during his stay on the side that is going on. Stay at Champukur, the number of people coming to see him and attain his grace increased daily. Householder devotees like Harish Chandra Mustafi and young devotees like Sarada Prasanga Mitra, he became Triguna Chaitananda later on, who became afterwards well known in the order of the devotees of Sri Ramakrishna as Swami Trigunatita. Trigunatita Nanda, then Swamiji said it has become too long, let us cut it. Manindranath Gupta, also a small boy at that time, and many others saw the master here for the first time. So it takes him outside that circle previously seen because Purna had come before. Again, although many like Swami Abhedananda had paid a visit or two to Dakshineshwar, it was here that they got the opportunity of coming into intimate contact with him. Abhedan Swami and Shampukur came to intimate contact. He had seen and Master had accepted him. The Master observed their nature and past impressions and guided them accordingly along the path of sadhana, where either pure devotion or devotion with discrimination between the real and the unreal predominated. Bhakti Pradhan or Viveka Yukta Bhakti Pradhan. He never missed an opportunity to give them instruction in secluded places. So though many people used to come, used to take him aside and talk and urge them to go forward on those paths. The master, it is known to us, was one day teaching a young man various kinds of sitting and other bodily postures fit for the meditation on God with forms and on God without forms. Sitting in the posture of Padmasana, you know Padmasana? Keeping the legs over the other legs. Placing on the palm of his left hand, the back of his right, palm of his right, palm of his left hand, the back of his right. Palm of his left hand, the palm of his right. Taking both the hands in that posture to his breast. Yes. Both the hands placing on the palm of his left hand. Palm of his left hand, the back of his right. Okay. That means right hand touches the chest and on that the left hand. Taking both the hands in that posture to his breast, shutting his eyes. He said, this is the best posture fit for all kinds of meditation on God with forms. For Sakar Upasana, we should feel our heart and then meditate on God there. And remaining seated in that posture of Padmasana, placing his right and left hand on his right and left knees respectively, putting the hands on the knees. Bringing together the tips of the thumb and the forefingers of each hand. Keeping all other fingers straight and touching the forefinger with his thumb. And all this is put on the knee. And steadying his eyes between the eyebrows. So, eyes are brought to eyebrows here so that the outside or inside world is not seen, though eyes are open. This is the most commended posture for the meditation on God without forms. Scarcely had the master said those words when he entered into ecstasy. Because the posture fit for them, he went into samadhi. And bringing the mind forcibly down, shortly afterwards to the plane of normal consciousness, said, no more can be shown. As soon as I sit in that posture, the mind becomes absorbed and merges in ecstasy. The vital airs within the body go upwards, and the sore in the throat gets hurt. The doctor therefore has especially enjoined that there must not be any ecstasy. The young man became very sorry and said, why did you demonstrate all those things? I did not ask to see them. He replied, that is true, but can I do without demonstrating or expounding a little to you? Now the same man is expounding both, so that according to his tendency from time to time he can use both. The young man was surprised to think of his infinite grace and the great inclination of his mind to ecstasy, both things. Many were attracted to the master to see the sweetness and uniqueness of all his action. So another incident now. There was such a unique sweetness in all the actions of the master that many newcomers were simply overwhelmed by it. We mention below an event as an example, many out of which one example. We heard of it from Atul Chandra Ghosh, the great poet Girish Chandra's younger brother, who had exceptional love for his friend. Atul had exceptional love for his friend, so he had invited his friends to see something. We shall try to record it in his own language as far as possible, Atul's language. An example, Upendra, a sub-judge. Upendranath Ghosh, he was related to Upendranath Basu of Shambhala. Upendranath Basu is a well-known name, so related to him, Upendranath Ghosh. Upendra was an intimate friend of mine, Atul's. He was a sub-judge, living away from home. After my acquaintance with the master, I wrote to him, when you come next, I shall show you a wonderful object. He came during the Christmas holidays and reminded me of that. I said, I thought of introducing you to Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa, but he is now ill and is staying at Shampuku. Doctors have forbidden him to talk. You are a newcomer, so how can I take you there? That day passed. Another day, Upendra came to see my brother Girish Chandra. When there arose a talk about the master, my brother said to him, why don't you go with Atul someday and see the master? Girish did not care about this. Upendra said, he has been telling me for the last 6 months that he would take me there. But when I came here and reminded him of it, he said it would not be possible now. I heard these words and said to my brother, even we are not always allowed to go in now. How can I take a newcomer? My brother said, anyway, take him once. That done, the master will show himself to him and love him if he is lucky enough. Good. Upendra came to Shampukur. His experience of the master's loving behavior with him first time. Later one afternoon, I took Upendra there. The master's room was packed with an audience sitting on two long mats spread on the floor, reaching up to his bed. Full hall was packed like that. And various kinds of useless talks were going on. That is what Atul thinks. Talks on painting. For the painter, another Vakchi was there on that day. So with him, Thakur was talking about art. Art plays a great part in spirituality. Atul might not know it, but Thakur was talking like another. Atul thinks it is useless stuff. On melting gold in a goldsmith's shop and so on. That is how some people cheat others in the name of God. Now let us read that in the footnote. The master sometimes told us an amusing story of the dexterity of goldsmiths in stealing gold and silver. Atul Babu referred to that story here. Sardan Swamiji is explaining that story now. The story is this. A man came to a goldsmith shop with a few friends in order to sell an ornament and saw an old goldsmith who had his whole body decked out with marks of sacred colored earth. That is the Vaishnavas use that. Or sandal paste. That color is like sandal paste, so this or that is used. His head with a tuft of hair and his neck with string of beads. He was sitting outside his house and taking the name of Hari in a very profound mood. His 3 or 4 assistants had put on similar marks and beads and engaged themselves in making various kinds of jewels inside the house. Seeing the Sattvika dress and ornaments of the old goldsmith and his assistants, that man and his friends thought that the goldsmiths were religious people and would not cheat them. They then placed the jewel they had come to sell before the old goldsmith and requested him to ascertain its exact price. The old man seated them lovingly and asked an assistant to prepare a smoke of tobacco for them. That is the courtesy. He then tested the ornament on the touchstone, told them the price of that quality of gold, and with their permission, handed it over to an assistant inside the house to melt it, because they will weigh and then evaluate. The assistant began immediately to melt it, and suddenly remembering God, cried out, Keshav, Keshav. In Bengali, Wo is pronounced as Bo, and Sh and Sh are similar. So Keshav, who are all they? Keshav means God. Keshav, Keshav, on account of the association of divine ideas in his mind, the old man also simultaneously uttered in a loud voice, Gopala, Gopala. That means as fools as the cowherds are. And Gopal is the name of God. So it appeared as if his devotion is roused. An assistant inside the house repeated immediately afterwards, Hari, Hari, Hari. Shall we steal? Shall we steal? Shall we steal? The one who brought tobacco handed over the bowl to the newcomer in the meantime and said aloud when entering the house, Hara, Hara, Hara. Hara is the name of Shiva, but Hara means stealing, stealing, stealing. As soon as he said so, the first mentioned assistant threw dexterously some melted gold into the pot filled with water before him and appropriated it to themselves. Then other things he will weigh, minus that. The newcomers did not understand that for the goldsmith and his assistant, the aforesaid names of the divine Lord had unusual meaning. Instead of saying Keshav, the name of God, they inquired Keshav, which in Bengali means who are they. In other words, they wanted to know whether the newcomers were intelligent or foolish. As answer to this question, the old man said Gopala, not in the sense of the boy Krishna, but in the sense of Gopala, a herd of cattle, not cattle keepers. Pala means a group, a herd of cattle, implying thereby that they were as foolish as a herd of cattle. And by the two words Hari and Hara, the names of Vishnu and Shiva respectively were meant let me then steal and do steal. Hari and Hara. Pleased with their devotion and steadfastness in religion, the newcomers smoked tobacco without suspecting any foul trick. They then had the melted gold weighed, took its price, and returned home cheerfully. The association of this story in Master's life is also mentioned. Bankim Chandra, the famous novelist of Bengal, took up a skeptical attitude and put the master various complicated questions on religion on the day on which the master met him in the house of Adar Chandra Sen, his very loving devotee. After giving proper replies to those questions, the master said to Bankim Chandra by way of a joke, you are Bankim, crooked by name and also by actions. Pleased with the answer which touched him to the heart, Bankim Babu said, Sir, you must come to our Kathalpada house some day. There are arrangements for the service of the Divine Lord and all of us take the name of Hari. The master replied in fun, how do you take the name of Hari? Is it as that goldsmith took it? Saying so, the master narrated the opposite story, which evoked a peal of laughter from the audience. So that is the reference. So now, this Atul talks that they are useless talks are going on. On melting gold in the goldsmith shop and so on. We sat for a long time, but there was not a single word except words of that nature. I thought, I have brought this newcomer here today, and it is this very day that all kinds of useless talks are going on. What an idea about the master would he, Upendra, carry with him? I felt extremely difficult on thinking so. I was looking at him at intervals with apprehension. But whenever I looked at him, I saw in his face an evident expression of pleasure, as if he was enjoying those talks quite well. I then asked him by sign to leave, but he signed back to me to wait a little more. I gave him such hints twice or thrice when he rose and came up by me. I then asked him, "What were you listening to so long? What is there to listen to in those talks? Do we call you simple without a reason?" Actually, the word is Banga. The people from East Bengal are taken to be less in intelligence by people in Calcutta. Do we call you simple without a reason? Simpleton. We used to call him so because he had a tattooed mark on his forehead. Tattooed mark? কপালে একটি উল্কের টিপ ছিল. Okay, maybe tattooed mark. He replied, "Oh no, it was nice to listen to. I only heard of universal love before, but never saw it manifested in anyone. I experienced it today in him, the master, when I saw him making merry on trifling topics like that with all around." So that what he noticed was this. Thakur's universal love for anybody around and how he can merry make with them. And Thakur is always good with anybody. But I must come once again. I have 3 questions to ask. I took Upendra with me the next morning. There was practically none with the master then. Only 1 or 2 attendants and Sri Mallik, my brother-in-law, were there. I said to Upendra over and over again before we started, "Ask him personally what you have to ask. You will then get answers to your satisfaction. Don't ask these questions through anybody else." But he was of a bashful nature. He happened to do so exactly what I told him not to do. He put the questions through Mallik. The master gave answers which I understood from the expression of Upendra's face were not to his satisfaction because he replied to Mallik. I then said to him in whispers, "It is bound to be so. Did I not tell you again and again to ask him personally what you had to ask? Why don't you put questions personally? Why have you engaged a pleader to hold a brief for you?" God is both with form and without form, just like water and ice. He took courage and put personally 1 question to the master. "Sir, has God forms or has he not? And if both, how can 2 such contradictory names be in him at the same time?" Because he had heard from the master like that. The master answered immediately, "He is both with form and without form, like water and ice. A non-specific form and a specific form." Upendra had taken the science course at college, so that example given by the master was to his entire satisfaction. He was pleased to get that answer, which he understood with the help of his knowledge of science. He asked that 1 question and refrained from asking 2 others, bowed down to the master and took leave of him. When we came out, I asked him, Upendra, you said you had 3 questions. Why did you put only one and come away? He replied, don't you understand? All the 3 questions of mine have been solved at once by that one answer. He had asked 3 questions actually, whether this or that or both. And if both, then how possible? And all have been replied. Atul was annoyed at Brother Ram's words. Ram Babu was a little narrow and fanatic that we have seen. Brother Ram, Ramchandra Datta, perhaps you remember, Atul is telling his friends. Perhaps you remember Saradananda Swami used to take an early meal at home at that time and come very often to the master with a small bundle containing his office dress. He spent an hour or two there before he changed his dress and went to office. When the master was answering Upendra's question, he came suddenly to that room while he was putting on his office dress and heard those words of the master. As soon as we came out, Brother Ram ventured to say, Brother Atul, bring him, Upendra, here. The master's answer to his question will be too difficult for him to understand. He will have to read this book of mine, Tattva Prakashika by Ramchandra Datta. In order to understand the master's words, I was annoyed at those words and did not hesitate to say, is it not a fact, Brother Ram, that you have been coming to the master for the last 7 years, long before we saw him? And you say he will not understand the truth from what the master has said, but will understand it through the perusal of your book. What the master could not make clear, your book will. What a queer idea. But if you want to give Upendra your book to read, you may do so. That is a different matter. Brother Ram became a little embarrassed and handed over the book to Upendra. So we have seen several incidents and the section is over. Om Sarvadharma Sthapakasvam Sarvadharma Swarupaka Acharyanam Mahacharyo Ramakrishnaya Te Namaha. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Jaya